Turn off your lights right now, because what you're about to hear isn't just a story. It's something people swear they survived. Tonight, we step into the shadowy world of urban legends, those half-true, half-imagined nightmares whispered across generations. Stories born somewhere between reality and fear, growing darker each time they're told. Some are rooted in truth, others feel too real to ignore. And all of them leave one chilling question behind. What if they're not just stories? In this video, we descend into three of the most disturbing legends ever shared. The black-eyed children haunting quiet roads in the US and UK. A cursed apartment building at 72 Tran Hung Dao in Saigon, where something refuses to leave. And Polybius, a mysterious arcade game from the 1980s rumored to drive players to madness, or worse. So put on your headphones, sit in the dark, and don't look behind you, because this begins with a man who almost made a fatal mistake. It was a late night in 1996 in Abilene, Texas. A journalist named Brian Bethel sat alone in his parked car outside a movie theater, finishing some notes. The air was still, too still. The kind of silence that makes your instincts scream before your mind understands why. Then a knock. Two boys stood at his window. They looked normal, around 9 to 12 years old. Plain clothes, pale faces. One of them spoke politely, asking for a ride home. They said they had forgotten their money and needed to get it before the movie started. But something didn't add up. The movie they mentioned had already been playing for nearly an hour, and their voices weren't right. Calm, flat, almost rehearsed, like something pretending to be human. A cold wave crept down Brian's spine. Every instinct told him not to open that door. But the boys kept insisting. Just let us in, just for a moment. We need to call our mother. Then came the sentence that froze his blood. We don't have any weapons. He never asked. And that's when he looked closer. Under the dim yellow light, their eyes were completely black. No whites, no reflection, just endless darkness, like staring into something that shouldn't exist. Panic exploded inside him. Brian slammed the car into gear and sped away, his heart pounding. He glanced in the rearview mirror. They were gone. No footsteps, no shadows, nothing, as if they had never been there at all. Brian later shared his experience online in 1996, and the story spread like wildfire. It became one of the earliest and most terrifying internet legends, what we now call creepypasta. But what made it worse was what came next. More sightings across the US, the UK, different people, same story. Pale children, black eyes, knocking at doors, asking to be let in, always asking for permission, like something ancient bound by rules. Witnesses say these children appear between ages 6 and 16, always at night, always in isolated places. Their voices start gentle, polite, even innocent. But if you hesitate, they change. Their tone sharpens. Their words repeat. Not requests anymore, but commands. And if you refuse, they don't leave quietly. Some say they bang on doors. Others hear them scream in rage. But if you hold your ground and never let them in, they eventually disappear. Just like that. So what are they? No one knows for sure. Some believe they are demons wearing the faces of children, exploiting human sympathy to gain entry. Others compare them to vampires, entities that must be invited inside before they can harm you. There are even theories suggesting something far stranger, something not from this world at all. In 2014, British tabloids reignited the panic, claiming a surge of sightings worldwide. Paranormal investigators rushed to collect testimonies, each one more disturbing than the last. But here's the part that keeps people awake at night. Every single encounter begins the same way. A quiet night, a sudden knock, and a voice on the other side asking to come in. And then the theories began to spiral. Restless spirits, teenage vampires, even extraterrestrial entities disguising themselves as children to study human behavior. Each explanation darker than the last. Yet despite the fear they ignite, there is still no solid evidence, no verified images, no scientific proof that the black-eyed children are real. Paranormal writer Sharon A. Hill conducted her own investigation and found nothing credible to support the stories. Her conclusion was blunt. These accounts spread the same way ancient folklore once did, by word of mouth, evolving with every retelling. In her view, the black-eyed children are less a supernatural threat and more a modern psychological phenomenon, a story engineered by fear, amplified by the internet, and sustained by our fascination with the unknown. But even if they're only stories, why do they feel so real? Because far from the highways of America and the quiet streets of England, in the heart of Vietnam's most vibrant city, there stands a place where fear doesn't need imagination. In the middle of dazzling Ho Chi Minh City, surrounded by noise, light, and life, there exists a decaying structure wrapped in layers of dark legend. Apartment 727 Tran Hung Dao, once known as the luxurious President Building, constructed in 1960, it rose 13 stories high with more than 500 rooms, a proud symbol of modern architecture in the South. But time has turned that symbol into a ruin. Cracked walls, rotting concrete, rusted steel exposed like bones. A structure not just abandoned, but feared, because this building is rumored to be one of the most haunted places in the city. The stories trace back to its construction. Workers fell from scaffolding, sudden deaths, accidents that made no sense. The 13th floor, cursed, incomplete, impossible to finish. Panic spread among investors, and desperation led to something far darker. According to local accounts, the owner ordered a ritual, an act meant not to bless, but to suppress. For young female bodies were allegedly buried at the four corners of the foundation, a human sacrifice meant to stabilize the structure. After that, the building was completed, but something else may have been awakened. During the war, American forces used the building as a rest facility. Yet one detail remains chilling. The 13th floor was never used. Locked, abandoned, untouched. Meanwhile, the 12th floor was converted into a bar, a place of noise, alcohol, and distraction. Above it, silence. After 1975, the building was repurposed into housing. Hundreds of families moved in. Life returned, briefly. Then the stories began. Residents spoke of children crying in the dead of night from empty hallways. Heavy footsteps echoing like marching soldiers on the 12th floor. A woman's voice, sobbing, broken, drifting down from the sealed 13th floor where no one lived. Some claimed to see shadows moving where no light could reach. Shapes slipping past stairwells. Figures watching, then vanishing. One of the strangest accounts came from an elderly woman who sold drinks outside the building. She said that on certain nights, full moons or the first day of the lunar month, she would receive money that wasn't real. Mixed among normal bills were ghost offerings, paper money meant for the dead. At first, she burned them in fear. Then she noticed something. A young woman would appear regularly, sit quietly, drink, and pay with what looked like real cash, but felt unnaturally cold. When the vendors separated those bills and checked them later, they had turned into funeral money. Locals later whispered the truth. The girl had died long ago inside that building. Some said she was wronged. Others claimed she took her own life. But everyone agreed on one thing: her spirit never left. And those who accepted her money risked taking her place. Terrified, the old vendor left. She never came back. Years later, a group of young reporters decided to investigate. When they asked about the upper floors, a nearby vendor tried to stop them. Her warning was simple: go if you want, but don't blame anyone if you come back changed. Or don't come back at all. They went anyway. The moment they stepped inside, the atmosphere hit them like a wall. Rotting garbage, mold, the stench of decay so thick it burned the throat. Dim lights flickering, long corridors swallowed in darkness. No ghosts appeared. They didn't need to, because the building itself felt alive, breathing, watching, waiting. Water dripped somewhere in the distance. Wind howled through broken windows like distant screams. Every step echoed too loudly, as if something deeper inside was listening. And everywhere they looked, the structure was collapsing. Walls splitting open, concrete crumbling, rusted steel clawing its way out like something trying to escape. This wasn't just an abandoned building. It felt like a battlefield long after the war had ended, where something unseen had never left. The staircase was collapsing, rotted, splintered, barely holding together under its own weight. Rainwater flooded the corridors, turning every step into a silent risk. And from deep within the suffocating darkness of the upper floors, strange creaking sounds echoed from time to time. Was it just the wind forcing its way through broken windows, or something else, something unseen, moving in the dark? But here's the uncomfortable question. Was the truth ever as terrifying as the legends claimed? Over time, most residents of apartment 727 Tran Hung Dao were evacuated, not because of ghosts, but because the building itself had become a death trap. The authorities in Ho Chi Minh City officially confirmed that the structure was severely damaged and needed to be demolished. Only a handful of families, barely more than a dozen, refused to leave. And those who stayed, they told a very different story. Nguyen Van Dong, a man who had worked as the water pump operator there for over 30 years, dismissed the rumors entirely. Night after night, he walked through the building's darkest corners alone. No ghosts, no shadows chasing him. Just decay, silence, and the smell of abandonment. Another longtime resident, Tran Kim Nak, who had lived there since 1977, laughed at the mention of spirits. According to her, the so-called hauntings were nothing more than imagination fueled by fear. People were leaving because the building was unsafe, not cursed. And sometimes the ghosts people claimed to see, they were real, but not supernatural. Homeless individuals hiding in shadows. Addicts slipping through broken entrances. Thieves using the darkness as cover. In a place where light barely existed, the human mind filled in the gaps with monsters. After years of chilling rumors, the building was finally torn down, erased from the city skyline like it had never existed. But the story survived. From the alleged ritual of 4 sacrificed virgins, to phantom soldiers, to weeping women and crying children. These tales transformed a crumbling structure into one of the most infamous urban legends of Saigon. And maybe that's the real horror, because it proves something far more dangerous than ghosts. Fear spreads faster than truth. In the right place, in the right darkness. The human mind doesn't just imagine monsters. It creates them. And just when you think the nightmare ends there, we move to another story, another place, another mystery, back to the United States. Early 1980s, the golden age of arcade machines. But this wasn't just a game. It was something else, something hidden in plain sight. They called it Polybius. Imagine this, autumn 1981, a quiet arcade in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon. Neon lights flicker. The hum of machines fills the air, and in one dark corner, a cabinet appears overnight. No announcement, no promotion. Just there, the machine was pitch black, no artwork, no flashy design. On its screen, only one thing glowed in eerie green letters. Polybius, copyright 1981. A company named Sinneslaschen, a strange German word no one had ever heard of. And that mystery pulled people in. Teenagers gathered. Curiosity turned into obsession. At first, they were amazed. The gameplay was unlike anything before. Geometric visuals, pulsing lights, hypnotic sounds that felt like they were crawling inside your mind. People lined up for hours. Fights broke out just to get a turn. Because once you played it, you wanted more. But then, something went wrong. Within days, players began showing disturbing symptoms. Memory loss during the day. Insomnia at night. Violent nightmares filled with flashing shapes from the game. Some reported sudden panic attacks. Others, complete mental breakdowns. And then came the rumors. A few players didn't just quit the game. They disappeared. Around the same time, witnesses reported seeing men in black, silent figures appearing late at night, standing in front of the Polybius machine. They would open it, extract something, data, perhaps, and leave without a word. No names, no records, no explanation, just shadows monitoring shadows. The whispers grew louder. This wasn't just a game. It was an experiment, a secret government project, a psychological weapon designed to test human minds. Some even linked it to MK Ultra, one of the most infamous covert operations in history. And then, just as suddenly as it appeared, Polybius vanished. Every machine, gone within a month. No trace, no official statement. Nothing, as if it had never existed. But the damage? That remained. For nearly 2 decades, the story faded into obscurity, passed around in whispers, dismissed as myth. Until one day in 1998, an anonymous post surfaced online, and everything started again. And then, just when the story seemed ready to fade into obscurity, it came back. In 1998, an anonymous post appeared on a small arcade-focused website called coinop.org. The author claimed something shocking. They had once possessed fragments of data from the original Polybius machine. According to them, what people dismissed as a myth was real. They insisted the game had been part of a covert psychological experiment, linked directly to MKUltra, a classified operation designed to study human behavior under extreme sensory manipulation. The post even included what looked like evidence, a screenshot of the game's title screen, green text, minimal design, a haunting label, 1981 Sinnesloshen. The name itself sent chills through the community. Sins meaning senses, Lashen meaning to erase. Put together, the erasure of the senses. The internet exploded. Retro gamers, collectors, and conspiracy hunters began digging obsessively for proof. Theories multiplied, but no matter how deep they searched, no one could find a real Polybius machine. Still, the legend refused to die. Instead, it evolved. The myth of Polybius inspired countless articles, videos, and even new games. Indie titles borrowing its name appeared years later, feeding the narrative that something like it could have existed. It became more than a story. It became a symbol, a dark echo of the 1980s, where fascination with technology collided with fear of losing control. But what is the truth? Did Polybius ever exist? Or was it all an elaborate illusion? Journalists and game historians began their own investigations. Their conclusion was clear and disappointing to some. There is no credible evidence that Polybius ever existed in the real world. No arcade magazines from the 1980s mention it. No company named Sinnesloshen was ever registered. No physical cabinet has ever been found. Nothing. Most researchers now believe the legend was born from a strange combination of real but unrelated events. Science writer Brian Dunning pointed to incidents that actually happened in Portland in 1981. In one case, a teenager collapsed after playing Tempest for too long. The flashing visuals triggered seizure. In another, a player pushed himself through a 28-hour marathon session of asteroids and ended up hospitalized with severe stomach pain. These weren't myths. They were reported in local news. And around the same time, something else was happening. The FBI had launched operations targeting illegal gambling hidden inside arcade machines. Agents went undercover, monitoring suspicious cabinets for days. To outside observers, they looked exactly like the men in black, silent figures standing near machines, watching, recording, then disappearing. 2 real events: health incidents, federal surveillance, combined, distorted, retold. And from that mixture, Polybius was born. Later investigations suggested that the 1998 post itself may have been a deliberate hoax, possibly created to drive traffic to the site. Some even suspect the website owner, Kurt Kohler, of fabricating the entire entry. And yet, none of that killed the legend, because the power of Polybius was never in whether it was real. It was in what it represented. For a generation raised during the arcade boom, the idea of a machine that could control your mind wasn't just scary, it felt possible. The 1980s were filled with warnings about video games causing seizures, addiction, even death. In fact, in 1981, a young man named Jeff Daly reportedly died after playing Berserk, fueling rumors of cursed machines. At the same time, American culture was already familiar with the concept of mysterious agents, the so-called men in black, figures said to silence witnesses and hide the truth. Fear was everywhere. All it needed was a story to connect the dots. And that's exactly what Polybius became. A perfect storm of paranoia, technology, and imagination. Now think about it. Three stories. The Black-Eyed Children, the Haunted Building at 727 Tran Hung Dao, and the Cursed Game Polybius. Different places, different times, but the same core. They're not just stories, they are reflections. Because urban legends don't just appear out of nowhere, they grow from something deeper inside us. I need to explain what we don't understand, a way to give shape to invisible fears. When reality feels incomplete, we fill in the gaps. With shadows, with whispers, with monsters. And maybe that's why these stories survive. Because somewhere deep down, we want to believe them. Because fear is the most addictive story of all. And that's why, even in the dead of night, we keep telling these stories. Urban legends don't just exist, they spread. From one voice to another, from whispers in the dark to echoes across generations. And every time they're told again, they change. A new detail, a darker twist, until the story becomes something far bigger than where it started. In the end, we don't just hear urban legends. We create them because deep down, people crave something beyond the ordinary. Something that breaks through the dull surface of everyday reality. These stories are proof of our imagination. Restless, curious, always searching for something more. Something impossible. Even if it's terrifying, we want to believe that somewhere out there, beyond what we see in the daylight, something else exists. Something watching, something waiting, and maybe something we're not meant to understand. That belief makes life feel less empty, more dangerous, more alive, and maybe that's the real purpose behind all of this. Not the truth, but the feeling. Because sometimes we don't need answers. We don't need proof. What matters is the experience, the chill running down your spine, the silence that suddenly feels too loud, the moment you glance behind you, just to be sure. So tonight, when the lights go out and the world grows quiet, remember, some stories don't end when the video does. They follow you. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And tell me in the comments, what story should we explore next? Because the next legend might be even closer than you think. Goodbye for now, and I'll see you in the dark.